Okay, my phone is balancing on an encyclopedia right now. True YouTube professional. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. This video I've mentioned a couple of times that I was going to make, which is a metal books recommendation video. Also, I'm sitting on my bed, which is where I was for the second video on this channel. I will return to the album door, which is where I always am, but I'm just sitting here because I have a whole bunch of books here sitting on my bed that I'm going to go through, so I just thought that would be easier. Anyway, without further ado, here are some metal/music related books that I have read and really enjoyed that I'm going to share with you guys. So the first book is Heavy Metal: The Story in Pictures by Rico Conning. This is quite a big book, as you can see, but it's very well organized in terms of it has like a timeline and it goes throughout the years and talks about how the metal scene was impacted. And there are a lot of really high quality photographs, as you can see. There's a lot of photos and stuff of bands, and there's a lot of information. That's Max Cavalera there from Sepultura, Phil from Whitechapel, a whole bunch of cool people. And there's also, towards the end, there's like a list of a bunch of different subgenres. So we have post-metal here, and then like glam metal, and yes, that's Black Veil Brides. Feel free to lose your shit. It just says that the image is inspired by glam metal. We know they're not a metal band, okay? Calm down. And then like grindcore and other stuff like that. So yeah, if you're a really big visual learner and you like looking at photos, then I would recommend this book. And there are also some very interesting quotes by various different musicians. I'll read a couple of them out. "We're not changing our name. Scott Ian of Anthrax, after letters containing spores of lethal anthrax, led to the death of 5 people. Interesting. "A kid once said to me, 'Do you get hangovers?' I said, 'To get hangovers, you have to stop drinking.'" And then probably my favourite quote from this book, this is Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden saying, "There are basically 2 categories of music, metal and bullshit." Couldn't agree more, Bruce. The next book is actually like a novel. It is A History of Heavy Metal by Andrew O'Neill, who is a cross-dressing black metal occultist stand-up comedian. Not exactly a saturated market. But this is basically the novel version of his stand-up show, which was also called A History of Heavy Metal, and it is fucking hilarious. His writing style is so funny. He's really good at, you know, getting people's attention, I guess, getting the attention of the reader. It did actually also genuinely help me learn a lot of stuff about the genre. It's edutaining and educational and entertaining. That is a mouthful. Edutaining. And it's also a really good look into the origins of the genre, as you would expect from a book called A History of Heavy Metal. There is actually history in it, but it's interesting history. I have a whole list of some of my favourite quotes. I'm not going to read all of them out, but I will read this from the prologue, which is called What is Heavy Metal? "I used to work in a shop in a student union. One of my student customers regularly wore a t-shirt with a picture of Ozzy Osbourne and the word metal on it in a Teutonic font. I noticed he didn't do the nod," and we have a footnote here. "The nod is a subtle but important acknowledgement of another metalhead. The same thing is shared between bikers and drivers of VW camper vans. It's our equivalent of a Masonic handshake. Where it is absent, say in London or between poses, it signifies bullshit. So I noticed he didn't do the nod, despite the fact that I was always listening to metal on the radio. I had long hair, still have obviously, and I practically lived in an oversized Marduk t-shirt. So I asked him, all friendly like, 'Hey man, what metal bands you into?' 'Oh,' he replied, 'I don't like metal.' After this, things get a little bit hazy. I vaguely heard him say, 'I just like the shirt,' as everything turned dark and I passed out with a sort of ringing in my ears." So he's describing Megadeth and he says, "Alas, they have been plagued with lineup problems, partly due to Mustaine's substance abuse." And then a footnote that says, "They were also cursed with his singing voice, which sounds like someone who isn't very good at voices pretending to be annoyed." The next 2 books I have are actually 2 books in a series. So we have Birth School Metallica Death by Paul Brannigan and Ian Winwood, who are 2 English music journalists. And then we have its sequel, Into the Black. So basically, this book starts from literally the birth of every member, or, you know, the start of the band Metallica, and it goes right up until the release of the Black Album. This album opens up with the massive Black Album tour and goes, it says 2014, but it actually goes up to more like 2016, just before they released Hardwired to Self-Destruct, so the current era, basically. I mean, I, at this point, would do anything for Metallica, so that would explain why I really love these 2 books. There is also a lot of photos in here, so in the middle section, like here, there's photos of the original lineup when they were all in school, so James, Lars, Kirk and Cliff. I love. And then some old photos of them performing sort of in the early days, things like that. And there's also some explanations of various memes and jokes to do with the band. Like, now I know what No Warning, No Second Chance means because of this book. And because of this book, I know what That'll Be Fine means, and I kind of wish I didn't. But anyway, those two books are really good. And like basically as the timeline goes through, as each member is introduced, like in terms of coming into the band, it starts with like Robert Augustin Trujillo. No, we don't get the full shebang, but you know, we get some of it. Was born on this day, and then some stuff about childhood, and then it talks about when he joined Metallica, and does that with every member. The next book I have here is called Slipknot, Inside the Sickness Behind the Masks. Now this book was actually written in 2001 before Iowa came out. So they only had one album. That was the impression that they had on the world at this point. It says, best of all, no one knows what they look like. Well, we do now, but back then they didn't. I think this book is really interesting because we can look at it in I'm looking at the script if you're wondering. So I know what to talk about. This book is really interesting because in hindsight we can look back on it and know a lot of things that they didn't know back then, or kind of get an idea of what it's like, or what it was like to be a Slipknot fan when they were just starting, sort of the impression they left on the world. We get a lot of context about the metal scene because this is mostly about the 90s when nu metal was exploding essentially, and that's kind of the genre that they fit into. Not as much now, but when they started it was very much the genre they fit into. And it's also a bit of a look into how strange they are, just generally. There are a bunch of photos in this one as well, like this wonderful photo here. When Kerrang! Magazine asked Sean, Clown, to come up with an idea for its Christmas cover at the end of 2000, they didn't expect him to pose with some decaying cow heads. I mean, I think we would expect him to do something like that. Something that is kind of sad is this quote here from Sean, also on the back, that says, "We're going all the way until one of us dies." Speaking of Slipknot, the next book I have is actually not specifically about music, but it is written by Corey Taylor from Slipknot, and it is his book, You're Making Me Hate You, which is, again, very fucking funny. He is an incredible writer. There's a lot of very impressive language, a very eloquent language in this book, and that's both actual impressive vocabulary and creative swearing. I think he combines the two very well. So this book is not the only book he's written. He's got quite a few, but this is the only one that I've read, and it's basically just talking about how, as a general consensus, people are really stupid, and he's kind of going into detail about, like, do people not realize how stupid they're being when they're doing X, Y, and Z? Yes, I say Z. Fight me. And also puts into words a lot of things that I've been wanting to say for ages, and I've never really known how to say it because I don't want to be like all holier than thou. Look at me, I am big galaxy brain, unlike these sheeple. And that's not really the approach he takes, because he does actually come to a point at the end where he's like, okay, look, sometimes I can be stupid as well. I'm not trying to make it look like I'm better than you, just like pull your head in when it comes to not being overly stupid. And there's a quote here where he's talking about pop music. "Every day I am assaulted by garbage. I wake up in the morning, turn on the TV, and instantly get stung by a million mediocre bees in the form of crappy writing, weak synth pop, gargling vocals, and nasal so-called rock and roll. It all sounds the same. Every song has the familiar, quirky keyboard/acoustic riff. A moaning attempt at a verse by college dropouts, and a falsetto melody disguised as a hook that serves as the big chorus. They may be in different keys and performed by different bands, but every song is the same." There's another thing where he's talking about what he doesn't like about airports. "Thankfully," we're talking about slow walkers. "Thankfully, I have been blessed with 4 speeds when walking through the airport. Low, mid, high, and fuck off. Once I've throttled up to fuck off, I shoot by these insipid turds with a blast of motion and some pounding of the quads." So, some nice imagery for you there. Now, the next book that I have is in the same vein of being written by a musician, and it's very different to Corey's book, because it is the book With My Eyes Wide Open by Brian Head Welch of Korn, and it was technically, I suppose, adapted into the film Loud Crazy Love. It's pretty much the same story by different names. Now, I know this one might not appeal to everyone because it is a story about him turning to Christianity, but I still think, even if, like, I'm not a Christian, I was born one, but not anymore. But even so, I think it is a really inspiring book about how you can turn your life around and there is hope for people, so you don't have to follow the same thing that he followed. But it is a really interesting look into, I guess, the other side of the Korn story. Like, we know a lot about what Korn were doing when he wasn't there, but we don't know a lot about what he was doing when he wasn't in Korn. And if you read this book, you'll find out a lot. And he went through a lot of shit to get to where he is now, and it basically talks about how he eventually came back to Korn. So this book was written after he came back to Korn. That was a lot of talking without a break. This book was written after he came back to Korn. He does also have another book that he wrote while he was still away from Korn. I think it's called Save Me From Myself. And so that one's a little bit different because he wasn't expecting to come back, whereas this one, he talks about how he came back, and there's a mention of that Carolina Rebellion show in 2012 when he was playing with Love and Death, and then he played Blind on stage with Korn, and this happened, and everyone was very emotional. Yeah, and I genuinely, like, cried when I read this because it's a beautiful story. Now, the last book I have fell off my bed, so I'm gonna get it, hold on. So this book is basically just a book of music. It's called The Little Black Book of Metal Hits, and it's just like... What did I turn to? I turned to Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap by AC/DC. It's basically just like lyrics and chords and stuff of various popular rock and metal songs, like that one. Yeah, there's not really much else to say about it. It's just very helpful if you want to learn some metal songs on guitar. And there's AC/DC, Metallica, Iron Maiden, Slayer, Anthrax, Black Sabbath, Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down, Sepultura, Judas Priest, all kinds of really cool musicians, so yeah. So anyway, that brings me to the end of this video talking about metal books. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you check any of those books out, maybe let me know what you think. I always say that as if people actually comment on my videos. No one really does, except for people commenting on my Batushka rant, like... Fuck bot, true cult. I'm gonna end this video now. See you in the next video, whenever that gets uploaded. I'm not 100% sure what it's gonna be yet, but like I've said many times before, I have a lot of videos planned, so it'll be one of them. But yes, thank you for watching this entire video if you did. It's very long, but I'll probably edit it to make it shorter. Yeah, bye for now.